The day a homeless man changed my life began like any other ordinary morning, quiet and forgettable. I never imagined that a single conversation on a broken sidewalk would rewrite everything I believed about success, failure, and myself. Back then, I thought life only changed in big moments, not in the smallest and dirtiest corners of the city. My name is Daniel Carter, and at that time I was 28 years old, chasing a version of success that never seemed to notice me. I worked a corporate job I hated, wore suits that felt like costumes, and smiled through meetings that drained my soul. From the outside, my life looked stable, but inside, I felt like I was quietly collapsing. Every morning, I walked the same route to the subway, passing the same coffee shop and the same cracked pavement. And every morning, I passed the same homeless man sitting near the old brick wall by the street corner. I noticed him, but I never truly saw him. He looked older than he probably was, wrapped in layers of torn clothing that couldn't fight the cold. His beard was messy, his hands always shaking slightly, and his eyes carried a tired awareness of the world. I told myself the same excuse every day, that I was too busy to stop. That morning, however, something felt heavier inside me, like my chest was carrying a weight I couldn't name. I had just received another email about downsizing at work, and my job suddenly felt fragile. Fear followed me as I walked, whispering doubts with every step. As I passed the homeless man, I heard his voice clearly for the first time. "Good morning," he said softly, without asking for money. The simplicity of it caught me off guard. I slowed down, surprised by myself, and looked at him properly. There was no desperation in his tone, only calm politeness. I nodded awkwardly and said good morning back before continuing. The rest of the day refused to let his voice leave my mind. In meetings, in emails, even while eating lunch, his greeting replayed in my thoughts. It bothered me more than it should have. The next morning, I found myself leaving home a little earlier than usual. I told myself it was coincidence, but deep down, I knew I wanted to see him again. He was there, sitting in the same spot, like a quiet constant in a rushing world. This time I stopped. I don't know why, but my feet refused to move forward. I asked him how he was doing, and he smiled like someone had finally acknowledged his existence. He told me his name was Robert. His voice was rough but warm, carrying years of stories it hadn't been allowed to tell. We spoke for less than 5 minutes, yet it felt longer than most conversations in my life. I handed him some money before leaving, feeling unsure and uncomfortable. He didn't grab it quickly like I expected, but thanked me calmly. As I walked away, something inside me felt unsettled, like a door had opened without permission. Over the next few weeks, stopping to talk to Robert became part of my routine. Sometimes we spoke about the weather, sometimes about the city, and sometimes about nothing at all. He never asked for more than conversation, and that confused me. One morning, curiosity finally won. I asked him how he ended up on the street. He didn't answer right away, just stared ahead like he was deciding whether I deserved the truth. When he finally spoke, his words were slow and careful. He told me he once had a family, a home, and a job he loved. Then life took turns he never saw coming. Robert spoke of a business he built from nothing, and how it collapsed after a betrayal. He spoke of losing his wife to illness and his daughter to distance and resentment. Each loss piled onto the next until he had nothing left to stand on. I listened in silence, feeling something unfamiliar tighten in my chest. This wasn't the story I expected from a man sitting on the sidewalk. It sounded uncomfortably close to my own fears. One day, I arrived to find Robert coughing violently. His face looked pale, and his hands trembled more than usual. I asked if he had seen a doctor, and he laughed softly at the question. That night, guilt followed me home. I lay awake thinking about how easily society steps over broken people. And for the first time, I wondered how thin the line was between Robert's life and mine. Weeks passed, and my job situation grew worse. Layoffs were confirmed, and my name hovered dangerously close to the list. Fear turned into anger, and anger turned into exhaustion. One morning, I sat beside Robert longer than usual. I told him about my job, my stress, and how lost I felt. He listened quietly, nodding as if he understood more than I expected. Then he said something that stayed with me. "Losing direction hurts more than losing money," he said calmly. Those words felt heavier than any advice I'd ever received. He explained that when everything was stripped away from him, he realized how much of his life he had lived on autopilot. He chased success without asking why, just like I was doing. And by the time he questioned it, he had already lost too much. That conversation shook me deeply. I started questioning choices I had never dared to question before. And slowly, without realizing it, my life began to shift. But the real turning point was still waiting, and it would arrive on a day I almost didn't stop to say good morning. That morning, Robert wasn't in his usual spot. The empty sidewalk felt wrong, like a missing piece of the city. I stood there longer than I meant to, uneasy and confused. Days passed, and he still didn't return. I asked nearby shop owners, but no one seemed to know where he had gone. A quiet panic settled inside me, heavier than I expected. One evening, as rain soaked the streets, I finally found him. He was lying under a bridge, weak and barely conscious. I called an ambulance without thinking twice. At the hospital, doctors told me he had severe pneumonia. They asked if I was family, and I hesitated before answering no. That hesitation haunted me. I visited him every day after work. Despite his condition, Robert smiled whenever he saw me. He told me I had already done more than most people ever would. During one visit, he handed me a folded piece of paper. He said it was something he'd written years ago but never shared. I didn't open it until I got home. It was a letter to his daughter. He wrote about regret, pride, and the mistakes he wished he could undo. Reading it broke something open inside me. Robert recovered slowly, but he couldn't return to the streets. I helped him find shelter and connected him with social workers. For the first time, he allowed himself to hope again. Around that time, I lost my job. Instead of panic, I felt an unexpected calm. Something inside me had already changed. I used my savings to start a small community program. It wasn't grand, just a place that offered meals, conversation, and dignity. Robert became part of it, not as a guest, but as a voice. He shared his story with others, warning them about blind ambition. People listened because he spoke from truth, not theory. Watching him speak gave me a sense of purpose I had never known. Months later, Robert reunited with his daughter. Their meeting was quiet, emotional, and full of tears. Healing didn't erase the past, but it softened its weight. As for me, my life took a new direction. I no longer chased titles or approval. I chased meaning. The homeless man I once passed without looking had become my teacher. He showed me that success without humanity is empty, and that sometimes the people society ignores hold the wisdom we need most. Every morning, I still walk that same street, but now I walk slower, paying attention, because you never know whose life or lesson is sitting right in front of you.